Hello and welcome back, dear learners. So far in this series, we have talked about the origin of the Russian language, its structure and nature. We have also discussed about the Russian alphabet. As we know that in the Russian alphabet, we have 33 letters, out of which there are 21 consonants and 10 vowels and 2 signs. We have also talked about the phonetics of Russian language had its own attributes, where we have talked about the consonants, devoicing of consonants and several other aspects. With the combination of these letters of consonants and vowels are pronounced independently, individually for understanding their correct pronunciation. We have also talked about when these vowels and consonants join together. We have talked about that how we are using these letters of the Russian alphabet, and we made a few words. Since we have used a good number of words in our previous lessons, now we are able to make a good number of sentences. These sentences were further classified as simple sentences, interrogative sentences with the usage of kto and что, which means what as well as who. Что means what and kto means who in our day-to-day communication. We have also talked about the usage of personal pronouns and possessive pronouns in Russian language. We have seen in the previous lessons that how do we use verbs in Russian. The usage of these verbs in their conjugated forms in sentences express the exact meaning and the right emotion. As in Russian, there is a huge number of verbs available, but to understand them in an efficient and correct manner, we have devised a method while paying attention to their endings, and now we know that how to conjugate them. We have also talked about glagoli движения or the verbs of motion initially. We have talked about the agreement between the nouns and adjective endings. As you remember that we have talked about the gender in Russian language as masculine, feminine and neuter gender, and accordingly all adjectives and nouns were classified. The further discussion which we had in our previous lessons regarding the usage of verbs in their conjugated forms with questions like где and куда. Dear learners, as we already know that in Russian language we have different cases. So far we have talked about these cases only with their definitions and only with a few examples. Now, as we are dealing with the prepositional case and the usage of где, we will be discussing more about the usage of где and куда in this lesson. If you remember that we have talked about that when do we use где? Где is used to indicate place. Где means where, whereas when do we use куда? When we need to indicate a movement. We have also learned about the usage of где and куда with an example where we have used good number of verbs. In где we have used verbs like жить, работать, находиться, играть, etc. Whereas with the usage of куда we have used verbs like идти ходить and ехать and ездить. Dear learners, in Russian language step by step we will be learning more about the aspects of the verbs as well as we will be talking about the usage of correct conjugation of these verbs while we use them in our simple and complex sentences. So, shall we go ahead? In this lesson, we will be discussing more about the usage of these verbs with nouns. These verbs will also be used with correct prepositions, as we already know that prepositions like va and na are being used. With the help of questions like kuda, we will be able to indicate the movement or the place of action. Please pay attention to the slide while I read a few sentences for you, so that you can understand these fundamental rules about gijie and kuda in a correct manner. Here, as we already know that nouns expressing place of action, these forms of nouns indicating place of action while answering the question gijie is being discussed in a detailed manner, whereas the question gijie, which normally refers to a place of action, while answering the question gijie, a noun requires a preposition before it, mostly va, but sometimes na. Let us pay attention to this slide where we are using va and na. These two prepositions va and na, which indicates in or at, are being used with some strict formula. Please pay attention to the pronunciation while I read the sentences for you. Before that, you can also pay attention that how these prepositions are being used with certain nouns. V Sankt Peterburgie, v Hyderabadje, v Gorodje, v Centre, v Klube, v Univerzitate. Here, if you pay attention to the usage of v, since for a better understanding I am reading it very slowly, but when it is pronounced, the correct manner of pronunciation is the sound of v changes into f sometimes, like v klube will be fklube, v centre will be fcentre, etc. Please pay attention once again. V Sankt Peterburgie, v Hyderabadje, v Gorodje, v Klube, v Univerzitate, в институте, в музее, в театре, в магазине. Here we have seen that how the preposition va is being used with several nouns. Now we will be discussing more about the usage of na with certain nouns, and you can remember them and use them accordingly whenever you are using this preposition with these nouns. You must always remember the usage of va and na according to the usage of these nouns. Please pay attention to the second list. Na or at, na stagione, na večere, na zavođe, na fabrike, na počete, na stalje, na konkurse, na egzamine, na stine, na koncerte and na stule. Dear learners, now since we have an understanding of how do we use prepositions va, which means in and sometimes at, and na, which is at, are being used in our day to day communication in Russian. Dear learners, in our simple sentences, we have also been using the prepositions va and na, and accordingly we have seen that how these prepositions are being used when the question is kuda. Let us take an example of usage of va and na. Мой папа живет в Лондоне. My father lives in London. Мой брат работает на фабрике. My brother works at the factory. So, accordingly, the previous slide which we have just learned, you can always use these prepositions with these nouns, so that whenever you use these prepositions, you use them in a correct manner. Let us listen to a few more such examples, so that we understand clearly when to use va and when to use na. Let us go to the next slide now. Dear learners, we must remember that for towns, countries, normally preposition were is used. Please pay attention to these sentences while I read them for you. In the beginning, we will talk about the masculine singular nouns answering the question Gdzie. Gdzie живет ваш друг? Here we have used Gdzie as a question, and since you have already have an understanding of intonation in Russian, accordingly the sound at the end arises. Please pay attention to the pronunciation while I read it for you. Где живет ваш брат? Где живет ваш папа? Где живут ваши родители? Here, if you pay attention to the intonation, in all these three sentences, the intonation at the end rises and thus it changes it into an interrogative sentence. Let us pay attention to the sentences now. Где живет ваш друг? Here we have conjugated the verb жить according to the друг. Он живет. Где? Мой друг живет в Лондоне. Here London, which means London in Russian, has been used with the preposition в. Мой друг живет в Лондоне. As we have talked that for towns and countries, normally we used the preposition в. That is why we have used the preposition в with London. Мой друг живет в Лондоне. You can also use several other expressions and use the same preposition and the noun. Мои родители живут в Лондоне. Моя сестра живет в Лондоне. Ты живешь в Лондоне? Она живет в Лондоне. Я живу в Лондоне. These are the examples where we have used several constructions, but of the same nature, where we have repeated the verb жить and the preposition в along with the noun London. Accordingly, in prepositional case, when we used v, the name of the town or a country has been used. In this case is London. Мой друг живет в Лондоне. Simple. Accordingly, let us go to the next sentence now and understand that how the nouns along with a preposition is being used. Please pay attention while I read it for you. Где работает его отец? Его отец работает на заводе. If you remember that we have talked about the role of intonation in Russian speech, here we have talked где работает его отец. Informally, for father we have been using the word papa, but formally we have another word in Russian for father is отец. Где работает его отец? Accordingly, the answer we have used here is его папа работает or его отец работает на заводе. So here we are using the preposition na, which means at the industrial plant, at the factory, something like you can use in your own sentences. Я работаю на заводе. Моя мама работает на фабрике. Твоя сестра работает на фабрике. These kind of sentences you can also make by your own while using different conjugation of the verb работать in your own sentences. You can also use different personal pronouns while practicing constructing these sentences by your own. Let us pay attention to the next sentence now and understand the usage of в and на. Где находится музей? Музей находится в центре. Here we have used the question где and the verb находится. Где находится музей? Музей means museum, and where does it situated at? Here we are saying that музей находится в центре. Here the preposition в has been used. Где находится музей? Музей находится в центре. the preposition v has been used with center and it has been changed into centre, since the rule and the fundamentals which we learned about in preposition case has been applied. Accordingly, we have seen that London has been changed into Londone, Musée has been changed into Musée, and Zavod has been changed into Zavodie. The only difference we have seen that the preposition v and n are being used in an appropriate manner according to the usage of place. For an example, place of a town, name of a country, these kind of things are used with v, whereas like offices, factories and plants etc. are being used with n. Whenever we are talking about places of interest, we say that it is used with v, like gdzie nachodится muzej, muzej nachodится в центре. Here it indicates at the center, and since we have also talked about that in Russian language context plays a very important role. So, accordingly the meaning of v and n also changes sometimes, like in the last sentence we have seen that gdzie nachodится muzej, we have used muzej nachodится в центре. Here it indicates the museum is located at the center. Let us go to the next slide and understand the usage of these prepositions in a more efficient manner. Dear learners, if you remember that in the beginning of the previous sessions we have talked about the usage of simple sentences in Russian. We have also talked about several cases in Russian, like the nominative case and prepositional case. In nominative case or the imичительный падеж, we have talked about the usage of что and кто. Что, which means what, and кто, which means who, are being used. For all inanimate things we use что. For example, что это? If I want to say this is a pen, I would use ручка. Это ручка. If I want to say this is a pencil, I would say это карандаш. And depending upon the gender of the noun, we will use the adjective. Что это? Это ручка. Что это? Это карандаш. Хорошая ручка, хороший карандаш, etc. If you pay attention to the usage of gdzie now, we always use gdzie when we use preposition. That is why it falls into a category of the case called the prepositional case in Russian. Let us take an example, университет, which means university. Что? Университет. Где? В университете. Here the hard ending noun of the masculine gender университет is changing into университете. Let us make a few examples. Где учится ваш брат? Мой брат учится в университете. Here we have seen the usage of где. Что это? Это мой университет. What is this? This is my university. Here we have seen that how университет has been used in a simple sentence or in nominative case. Let us go to the next sentences and understand them with more accuracy. Here we have given you a list of several nouns in nominative form and in prepositional form. With the help of prepositions, how these hard ending masculine gender words are being changed. For example, город в городе, институт в институте, магазин в магазине, в центр в центре. Likewise, all other such nouns will be changed into город в городе, институт в институте, университет в университете, etc. If you understand the meaning of the prepositions here, it would mean universitete, in the university or at the university accordingly. It depends upon the context again. Here we will read the usage of these nouns in что and где and learn the meaning of these nouns. Please pay attention while I read it for you. Что and где. Город means city, institute means institute, magazine means shop, center means center, штат means state, bazaar means bazaar, завод means plant, stol means table, stool means chair, урок means lesson, запад means west, восток means east, sever means north and yug means south. Accordingly, if you pay attention to the nouns with где, they are changing into в городе, в институте, в магазине, в центре, в штате, на базаре, на заводе, на столе, на стуле, на уроке, на западе, на востоке, на севере and на юге. Here, if we look at the directions like north, east, west, south, they are being used with na. Accordingly, when we use na, it indicates at or on. Accordingly, whenever in Russian, when several nouns are being used, for example, na stole, na stule, it means on the table, on the chair. Где лежит папка, where the file is situated or standing or located. You can use several such verbs, but preposition will be na. Accordingly, we use na. On the table, na stule, na stole, etc. For directions also, like we already know that na severe, na yugo-zapadye, na yug, na vostoke, etc. are being used. So, accordingly, in the north, on the north, at the north, etc. are being used with such prepositions. Let us go to the next slide now and understand the usage of va and na with the help of few examples. There are several nouns in Russian in the masculine gender itself which ends with soft sign, such as slovar, portfolio, spectacle. Slovar, which means dictionary, portfolio, which means briefcase, and spectacle, which means a speckle or a simple spectacle, or these kind of such words which are used with soft sign at their end are changing into ye. Slovar changes into slovarie, portfolio changes into portfolio, and spectacle changes into spectacle. Here the same fundamental rule have applied, where the hard ending, the last hard ending consonant has been changed into ye, like gorad changes into goradye, where we have included ye at the end. Here we have cut the soft sign and changes into ye, like slovar changes into slovarie, where we drop soft sign and add ye in place of that. Accordingly, we have used v spectacle and portfolio. Let us understand the meaning of such other nouns which are used in Russian language which belong to the masculine gender. These are the words such as muzee changes into muzieye, tramvai, tramvai, and cry, which changes into cry. Here if you pay attention to the ending of the words, muzee ends with e kratki, tramvai and cry also ends with e kratki. The simple fundamental rule where applied here is that we drop e kratki and add ye in place of that whenever we are using these nouns in prepositional case. Dear learners, since we have talked about different categories of masculine gender words, masculine gender nouns used in prepositional case with prepositions like va and na, we are also applying this method where we are talking about whenever a noun which ends with hard consonant at the end, and of course, it is meaning that it belongs to the masculine gender word, it changes into ye. Gorad, goraje. Accordingly, we have seen that there are several nouns of masculine gender words, nouns changing into ye again when it is ending with soft sign. We have also seen that there are several nouns which belong to the third category. Here these masculine gender nouns which are ending with e kratki like muzye, cry, etc. are changing into kraye, muzye, etc. are changing into the ending changes into ye, while we drop e kratki at the end. We will be discussing more about the usage of such other nouns which belong to the feminine gender and neuter gender in our coming lessons. So far, since we have discussed the usage of va and na in our day to day communication, now we have a fair idea where to use va and na in Russian language. In prepositional case, where we used va and na in our day to day communication. In the next lesson, as we have discussed that such other verbs like Moskva, komnata, these kind of words will be used since they belong to the feminine gender and how they are changing into prepositional case. I conclude this lesson here. Thank you.